Okay, well, I'm Sue Lonnie Madsen, and welcome to this week's legislative update. My guest is Senator Mark Schoesler, a neighbor from Ritzville. Welcome, Mark.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, so before we hit the record button, we were talking a little bit about the transportation package as well as energy. Let's start with transportation, and you had a few comments about the policy when most of the money goes to a minority of the users.
Well, what I have been led to understand is that 52% of the revenue from this package goes to transit. But yet we know that less than 10% of the state are regular transit users. That's not a fair and equitable system of funding it. But then the whole funding mechanism is flawed in that you start with a 6-cent export tax on fuel, which may or may not be constitutional. Then in the last 12 hours, the governor and attorney general in Idaho have said, stop, desist. Kate Brown in Oregon, who's normally very closely aligned with our governor, said, halt, stop, go no farther. Then the governor of Alaska and Congressman Don Young, one of the more senior members of the other body in Washington, said, why do we ship you our oil to create jobs, tax base, and then you tax us to get it back? Hardly a really smart idea to alienate the 3 states that we're most closely aligned with. Then you get into the tax package. The cap and tax package from a year ago is part of it. Maybe that's water under the bridge, maybe not. Then you get into every license plate goes from a user fee to a revenue source. And we require people to buy new plates when they buy a new or used vehicle. We require them to be replaced periodically on motorcycles, cars, and trucks. If you want a driver's license or an enhanced driver's license, which you must have to fly, or an ID card, you want to update the picture, they all take a very large increase, which is not a user fee, it's flat out a tax. Then you get to the back of the budget, and that's where the Capitol Press Corps and others have totally missed the story. Because you go to the back, a year ago there was a deal that low carbon fuel standards would not take effect until there was a gas tax implemented to fund roads. The governor vetoed that deal, and the legislature is currently suing the governor. It wipes that out with budget language that doesn't matter now. 1 year later, that is a problem. Then we look at one of the most regressive taxes on the average taxpayer are utility taxes. There is an option to use a 2% utility tax that's councilmatic, which means no vote of the people. Then you get what my progressive friends say is the most regressive tax, sales tax, but you can have another 1/10 of a cent local sales tax without a vote of the people.
You know, speaking of sales tax, one of the things that's always bugged me about, it's not just transportation projects, it's all capital projects in the state, is that we bond to pay for capital projects, and then the state pays itself sales tax. And so we have basically bonded to increase the money in the general fund by collecting sales tax on ourselves, which has never made any sense.
One of the reforms in connecting Washington when I was majority leader was that we would exempt some of that state portion of sales tax, which was a baby step in the right direction. But also buried in the back of this package is a ban on gas or diesel powered vehicle sales in 2030. That should be a standalone bill, standalone policy. Many, many years ago in my career, we said, okay, school zones, fines double, 20 miles per hour, flashing signs, camera radar. That's safety. slow zones by parks and hospitals, public safety. I don't think any Washington resident believes we shouldn't slow down around schools, hospitals, and parks. In the back of the budget, it expands that to 1 mile. Well, in most of our communities, you're within a mile of a school, park, or hospital, and you have photo radar and a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. Now
that's actually in the back of the transportation package?
Yes, it is. It is buried in the back of it as a little surprise nugget for you. Now, these policies are terrible. Standalone, they would struggle to pass. And they're all lumped together and they all pass the Senate. Then we get to, where does the money go? Well, let's look around. In Spokane, it's a pretty good deal for some. The majority leader lives there. You get $50 million for bus rapid transit. You get keep the north-south freeway on track and some other dogs and cats. You get outside of the 3rd legislative district, there is nothing. When we did the nickel package, connecting Washington, even Senator Haugen's package, there was something around the state. This is, people die on 2-lane highways like Highway 12, Highway 17, 26. They get 0. You get 3 I-5 projects, you get transit, and you can load up the family and you can go visit a hybrid electric ferry in just a few years. That's hardly reassuring to someone that lives in Yakima, the Tri-Cities, or Pullman. It is the most partisan and flawed package you could dream up.
I know there've been some talk about things like the mileage tax, which is problematic as well. I didn't realize there was the 2030 no sales of diesel and gasoline powered vehicles. That's going to make, I was already reading how the value of new gas and diesel powered vehicles right now is increasing after they've been purchased. Because of that, they're going to become scarce and more valuable.
Well, I had a meeting with Rivian, the electric truck manufacturer, and they wanted an even bigger tax break to get people to buy their product. But it got worse. They proudly announced that they could pull an 11,000-pound load. And I said, that's great if I don't put the cows in the trailer.
Yeah, exactly. That wasn't going to do us any good.
If I don't put the cows in the trailer, we can do that with electric pickup. And if my son needs to move a tractor during haying season, he probably better find a new way to haul it if he had an electric pickup. Now, we built our country without subsidizing gas stations, but we're expected to build electric charging stations and give tax breaks. I'm a pretty good student of history, but I don't remember ever hearing about Henry Ford getting gas stations as part of the deal, or the Dodge brothers or others, pioneers in the automobile industry, getting a tax credit for every vehicle sold.
Yeah,
and
we did subsidize the development of railroads, but that was a little bit of a different kind of infrastructure. And right now, I think that people forget that regardless of what else happens, we still need to deliver goods across the country, and then that last mile to every store and every house. We need roads.
The free market is a wonderful tool. Many companies have identified that their customers like electric vehicles. Their consumers want them to buy all green energy. And then there's people that are worried about just paying the bills. And the market works well. If we look at the housing problems we've got now, we look at legislation that would add $20,000 to a new home. And then we talk about, we're going to have to add another $100 million here, another $100 million there in the capital budget to build affordable housing. We're chasing our tail.
Yeah, that's part of the debate on ESHB 1770 that I was listening to and I wrote about this week is the whole idea that, well, since somebody will save money on their monthly energy bill, they can now afford a larger down payment and a larger mortgage. I mean, it doesn't work that way. Banks don't go in and say, what do you think you're going to pay on your electric bill next year? You have to have the money up front and you have to be able to prove the debt to income ratio. And yeah, utility bill isn't going to help.
No, we sat through, we did a collaborative capital budget with Senator Mullet, Honeyford, and myself. Very collaborative, good people to work with. It'll probably come out of Ways and Means Monday unanimously. So it can be done. There's still hope for the system. And we put an unprecedented amount of money into seismic upgrades for schools. And the seismic problem is not in my district by and large, but I have fires that we care about in our district. So we put an unprecedented amount of money there. We took care of the pressing needs of the state. And if you listen to 2 hours of testimony, everybody was supportive of what we did in a bipartisan way, except the increase wasn't big enough for the housing advocates. Now, I used an analogy. We funded a tiny home village in a county, and it cost about $120,000 to build a tiny home to put an unhoused person in. Habitat for Humanity can build a single family home with the owner's sweat equity and donated labor materials for 60-some thousand. So we can build 2 single family homes that free up 2 rentals and families have ownership. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that cures high prices is supply. Doesn't matter whether we're talking about the corn market or the housing market, you cure it with increasing supply.
Yeah, we are missing, I believe it was Representative Wilcox that said yesterday, 250,000, and I've read that statistic other places. We're missing 250,000 homes for people in the state of Washington.
And the answer is very, it's a very widespread answer, Sue Lonnie. I mean, for some it is amending the Growth Management Act. Mm-hmm. For some it is not adding cost to the project. For some it's Habitat for Humanity. There's a host of things, we can't build a manufactured housing community outside an urban growth area. So if we lose one inside, those people have nowhere to go, because some people believe that the GMA is the 10 Commandments. It's not to be broken. I don't amend the 10 Commandments, but I could amend the GMA.
Yeah. So let's close on a few comments about the budget. It's good to hear that there's been some bipartisan work on that. And I understand it is supposed to come out Monday, but the hearings there won't be a whole lot of time for the public to have input. If you've got a few last words on what we should be looking for.
I think the capital budget will be very bipartisan, little if any dissent. Transportation we talked about. The operating budget is still, let's keep an open mind. I think we should here. I expect truckloads of spending from the new revenue. Just once, Lord, let's cut a few taxes.
That would be nice. That and refilling the rainy day fund.
Those are both good public policies.
Okay, well, thank you for joining me this morning, Mark, and I really love your Zoom backdrop. It's a gorgeous photo.
I had the privilege to visit that side of Palouse Falls with my friend Alex McGregor. This is looking across to the park not the other way around. So I've taken a couple of tours in McGregor Ranch. I've come out on both sides of the falls, talked about the history of the region with Alex. It's, it's a neat part of the job, making friends and learning things like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, I maybe someday I'll get down there and get a tour. So thanks for joining me, and I will get this posted today and let people know what's going on next week.
Thank you much, Sulani.
Okay, bye.